Hi folks, welcome back. I'm Carmen the Star Lady, and I'm glad to have you back here. So today I'm going to be looking at or offering some horoscopes for Mars moving into Libra on Wednesday, January 6th. And so I wanted to offer those to you today just as a way to help you understand maybe some of the archetypes that might be showing up in your life over the next 6 weeks. So I chatted about this in my overview for the month of August. So we're looking at Mars, who is a malefic planet. And what that means in Hellenistic astrology is sometimes Mars can reflect difficult things in our lives. He can represent conflict, he can represent anger, he can represent violence, but he can also represent courage and bravery and action and getting shit done. So, Mars is not a monolith. He has a multiplicity of archetypes that he can represent in our lives. And as he navigates the zodiac, different sides and different elements of Mars can show up in our lives, right? And so when he's called a malefic planet, that's basically what the ancient Hellenistic astrologers were speaking about. Saturn is called the Great Malefic. And so Saturn, unlike Mars, is not very active. He likes to slow things down. Colloquially, he's known as the cosmic no. Often Saturn will bring the kibosh to something that you're wanting to get done. And depending on the placement and the other planets he's speaking to in the sky, different themes can come up with Saturn. But Saturn's also about mystics. He's also about discipline. He rewards hard work. So though these two planets, Mars and Saturn, are called malefics, what that means is that they can be representative of some of those more difficult themes that can come up in our lives. They're not all bad all the time, right? And that's just like, Jupiter and Venus being the great benefics. That means, they bring wonderful things into our lives like love and pleasure and harmony and structure and healing and joy and, celebration and all those types of things. They can also, depending on where they are in the sky, those types of things can also be hindered or blocked, or there can be a closing down of those good things. So all that to say, just to kind of give framework to this, in Hellenistic astrology, things aren't binary. It isn't only good or only bad. There's a lot of both and. There's a lot of gray areas. And so my role as an astrologer is to take a look at the transits that the planets are making, where they are in the sky, who they're speaking to in the sky, to try and understand some of those characteristics that could be showing up for us. So that's what I'm going to look to do for you today with these horoscopes. Now, what I thought I would do, this is like my first kind of like horoscopes for the signs, but I'm thinking about doing a theme. Because we have Mars moving into Libra, as soon as it moves into Libra, it's going to be opposite Saturn. So Mars is in Libra and Saturn is in Aries. And so I think I'm going to be doing the horoscopes for both Aries and Libra at the same time. Then I'll do Virgo and Pisces, or Scorpio and Taurus. So I'm going to be doing them in a dyad, because the themes are going to be similar for the signs. So let me get started on that. First, before I do that, however, please, I would love you to like and subscribe and to come back again. And then please, any questions or any clarity that you need or would like on anything that I share in these videos, please don't hesitate to send me a message. I will look to get back to you. As of right now, I have the time to do that. So with that, let me just talk a little bit about Mars in Libra and Saturn in Aries. So Mars, as I explained a few minutes ago, some of the characteristics he represents in contrast to some of the characteristics that Venus represents. So we have Mars moving into Venus's house, right? And so basically, when Mars moves into Venus's house, he has to follow Venus's house rules. That's like if I go over to my great aunt's house, who I hardly know, and I'm staying at her house for 2 weeks, I have to follow her house rules. And if she insists that, I ensure that I clean the bathroom after every time I use it, then I have to do that, right? Because those are her house rules. So in a way, when I go to my great aunt's house, who I hardly know, there's a hindrance, a limitation on who I am and how I show up in the world. And that's a little bit like Mars moving into Venus. When he moves into Venus's house, he's got to follow her rules. Now, Mars and his characteristics, he's active, he's about getting shit done, he's about courage and bravery. He can also be a little bit prickly, ornery. He likes to stir things up too, and he can get angry at times. But when he's in Venus's house, he has to do those things the way Venus would require him to do those things. So by getting shit done, for example, he would have to do it in a very kind of harmonious and diplomatic way instead of just like going in there and getting it done, right? And conversely, Saturn, who is in Aries, he's in Mars's sign. So this means that Saturn is reporting to Mars. And Saturn actually struggles in the sign of Aries because Aries is a very active sign, given that Mars rules Aries, and Saturn is not active. Saturn's about slowing things down, about, taking stock of things like, no, I don't think we should do that because I don't think it's beneficial. He's about boundaries, and he's also about mystics and discipline and rewarding hard work. And so in Mars' sign of Aries would be like, let's get it done. And Saturn's like, let's think about this. Is this really the best thing to do? I don't know. So Saturn struggles in Aries. And just to use the terminology, Mars is in his detriment in Libra, which means he's not able to function fully as he is. And Saturn is in his fall in Aries, which means he's not able to function as much in his full capacity. He has to follow Mars's rules, which is difficult for Saturn to do. So we have this tension in these signs, Libra and Aries, for us showing up in the collective. So I want to talk a little bit about the areas of life that this tension might be showing up for you. So I'm going to start with Aries and Libra. So Aries and Libra, you have this. When we talk about these tensions, we have Saturn and Neptune. So I didn't speak about Neptune, but Neptune is quite dreamy about his feels. Likely there's like an unrealistic tone or overlay around expectations with Neptune. So both Saturn and Neptune are hanging out in Aries. And for Aries, this is in your first house. And for Libra, this is in your seventh house. And then the opposite is true. So for Libra risings, we have Mars in your first house, and we have Saturn and Neptune in your seventh house. So how this is likely going to show up for you guys is tensions around relationships and the understanding of self and identity in comparison or in relation to those relationships. For Libra, you're likely going to be struggling a little bit with who you are and how you show up in the world, and wanting to show up in the world in a more kind of like assertive, confident way, and struggling a little bit with how to do that, given that you're ruled by Venus, so more harmonious and diplomatic, right? And yet wanting to show up, like in a confident, in a like convicted, like I'm convinced of, who I am and how I want to show up. And then some tension around other people. For you, Aries, you're likely going to be struggling a little bit with who am I and how do I show up in the world in a more reflective way. Libra's going to be that's what I'm trying to say, more active and like doing about it, but feeling hindered because there's still this like theme of harmony and diplomacy in expressing themselves. For Aries, you're normally like, let's get this done, and Saturn's going, let's think about this. Is this really the best way to be doing this? And then Neptune's going to be like, I don't know, we can maybe do this. And there's a lack of kind of tangibility around Neptune and how they might be showing up. So the conversation around identity and self is slightly different for Aries and Libra, in that Libra wants to be active and get stuff done, but is feeling kind of hindered by the Venusian themes. And Aries, which is normally about getting stuff done, is being a little more hesitant with that. And then there's this contradistinction of relationships. Like, often relationships are a mirror to us. When we look at them, we see ourselves, right? And who we want to be. And sometimes we see reflected back to us someone we don't want to be, or someone we don't like, or an aspect of ourselves that we don't like. And this is going to be accentuated for both Aries rising and Libra risings, about who I am and how I understand myself in relation to other people. So a lot of questions. It could be in romantic relationships, it could be in business relationships, it could also be just generally with people, how you engage with people as you're out in the world. So just be aware of that tension. This is an invitation for both of you to explore who you are and explore new ways of expressing who you are, your identity, through these next 4 to 6 weeks. Alrighty, so we're now going to move to Taurus and Scorpio. So the tension here for you, Taurus and Scorpio, this conversation between Mars and Libra and Saturn and Neptune and Aries is across the 6th and 12th house axes. So both of these houses are more difficult. They are what we call liminal spaces. They have a more spiritual overlay to things. The 6th house, where Mars is for you, Taurus, is where Mars finds its joy. So there actually could be some kind of more positive overlay for this transit for you, Taurus. For you, Scorpio, you're going to have Saturn and Neptune in your 6th house. So the 6th house speaks to daily tasks that we have to do that we don't necessarily want to do. So it's like, you show up at work and you're expected, you have 7 tasks that you're in charge of. You like 3, you hate 4. And the 6th house will speak to the 4 that you hate, right? The 6th house can also speak to our relationship with our colleagues or our bosses, right? And Mars in the 6th house for you, Taurus, is about getting that shit done. You're like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I love this. I'm excited. And it's about the action. But with Mars in Libra, there is an invitation for you to be a more diplomatic and harmonious in getting those tasks done. Whereas you might normally just be like, okay, I'm just going to do this thing. But there could be some tensions coming up for you with colleagues or bosses that you'll need to navigate. So lean into those Venusian themes of harmony and diplomacy, even though you might want to just yell at people and push people out of the way and get stuff done. For you, Scorpio, in your 6th house, you have Saturn here. And around work, there might be a lack of energy to do those tasks that are required of you. There might be kind of like a dreaminess or a daydreaming around, ooh, what could I do? And, maybe with Aries in your 6th house, Scorpio, this idea of like, oh, like kind of being really active, like I could do this or I could do that. And then you have this tension, for you, Taurus, with Mars in your 6th, you've got Saturn in the 12th going, I don't know if you really want to do that. Is that really what's best? And you might actually have kind of some unconscious themes coming up for you, like with tension, say you're having tension at work, like, why am I reacting this way? Like, what's going on? And it's an invitation. Saturn's inviting you to kind of sit with those feelings and take a look at, why am I reacting this way to this thing? And then for you, Scorpio, you have Saturn in your 6th house and Mars in your 12th. So for you, it's about, you might find a lack of energy in doing those tasks, and Mars is going to want you to do that. And then it's an invitation for you to understand what the drive behind why you want to do those things, and it could be as simple as like, well, I got to make a living, but it could also be like, do I want to impress my boss? Like, do I feel I need to prove myself? Some of those kind of unconscious themes that you might not be aware of right now could likely show up for you. And I just want to say, for both Scorpio and Taurus, pay attention to your health. Just be mindful of how you navigate the world. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Make sure you're eating well, you're having good time with friends and people who love you, who can pour into you, and you're feeling supported. Just with both the malefics in the 6th and the 12th house, the 6th house can speak to physical health. Just be mindful of the physical health. And then for Taurus, just be mindful of your mental health, making sure that you're taking care of yourself, maybe that you're speaking to people about anything that's coming up for you. Wonderful. Okay, let's move on to the Gemini-Sagittarius axis. Let's do that. So Gemini and Sagittarius, you have this transit happening in your 5th and your 11th house. So the 5th house has to do with pleasure, creativity, and children, and the 11th house has to do with hopes, wishes, dreams, also groups or mentors. So for you, Gemini, you have Saturn in your 11th house. And for you, Sagittarius, you have Saturn in your 5th house. So let's speak to Saturn right now. So in your 5th house, in your 11th house, Gemini, you might be sensing kind of maybe a stalling or a slowing down of a project, a thing you were hoping to get done. And there might be some kind of like unrealistic expectations that you're having about that. There also could be like a closure or a coming to end of any groups or connections that you might have in a particular area of your life. You're finding an ending coming to that. And for you, Sagittarius, this could be, maybe experiencing some frustrations around creativity. Maybe there's some writer's block that you're experiencing. Or there could be some maybe issues around any children you have in your life that maybe they're struggling a little bit, and that you are being invited to support them in that way. And also around pleasure for you, Sagittarius. There might be like, an example I can think of is you just got out of a relationship and you're like, I want nothing to do with relationships for the next little while, right? So there could be, or you might be encountering issues in your intimate connections as well, like that there might be some struggle or some things that are coming up for you as well. And then speaking to you, Gemini, in regards to your 5th house with Mars there, it could be some struggle around children. You could be experiencing some tensions in relationship with children in your life, either your children or children within your family. Or maybe you're a teacher and your classroom's like whatever. And also, there's an invitation here, I think, to explore pleasure, maybe new ways of pleasure, and whether that be like intimate pleasure or painting or creative pleasure. And you're likely feeling a desire to really get into it and maybe feeling a bit of a tension around that. And So I would encourage both of you just to be aware of some of these tensions around personal life and groups and hopes, wishes, and dreams. And there might be some tension. Maybe what's going on at home is hindering you from pursuing a passion project outside of the home. So just to be aware of that. Alrighty, let's move on to the next signs. So we're looking at Cancer and Capricorn. All right, Cancer and Capricorn. So here we are with Cancer and Capricorn. So we have this conversation between Mars and Saturn and Neptune happening across the 4th and 10th house axes. So the 4th house has to do with home, family, parents, family karma, family secrets, private life. And the 10th house has to do with like career and public reputation. So, what I love about this for you, Cancer, is you have Venus and Jupiter in your 1st house. So, with the tension that will likely be happening between your private life and your public life, you have the energy, the archetypes, the support of Venus and Jupiter in your 1st house, the 1st house of self. So tapping into that energy, regardless of how this transit is showing up for you on the 4th and the 10th house axis, that you can connect back to yourself, you can ground yourself. And so looking at this, Cancer, you have Saturn and Neptune in your 10th and you have Mars in your 4th. So what this can mean for you, one of the ways or some of the ways that this could show up is that there could be some tension around family issues. Maybe the health of a parent might be a circumstance that you're dealing with. And then there's this tension between, your responsibility to home as well as in contradistinction to your responsibility in your career. So one way I could see this kind of showing up is that maybe you were put on probation at work because something happened, and as a result of that, more work is required of you because you have to kind of earn your position back, and then something happens at home, but you're also required to tend to that issue. So there can be some tension around that. It could also simply be wanting to kind of go inwards a little bit more. Maybe you're like, I'm just going to take a break. Say you're a social media influencer, or you're like, out there and seen and known by people, and you're like, I'm going to take a bit of a break from that, and I'm going to focus a little bit more on things at home, whether it be like, rearranging your home or painting or something like that. And then maybe experiencing some tension around all these things you'd like to do in your private life, and experiencing some roadblocks or some slowing down of that project. So I think too, for you, Cancer, regardless of what's going on externally to you, but either at work or in your public life, and then at home and in your private life, is tapping back into who you are and be, a little more rooted, working on being rooted in who you are and allowing the archetypes of Jupiter and Venus to support you as you journey this tension between private and public life. And then for you, Capricorn, it's the opposite in that Saturn and Neptune are in your 4th house and Mars is in your 10th house. So you might be experiencing some tension at work or in your public life, and yet with this tension, you have to be diplomatic about it. And pursue harmony, even though you might not want to do that. It also could indicate like activity, like movement around work, whether it's like maybe you're doing a new position or you're leaving a job and going to a new job, but at the same time you've got Saturn in your 4th house, and so calling your attention to those more private things, like maybe something's going on at home that requires your attention. You're like, I can't really think about this career move right now because I've got this other stuff going on at home, or I have a parent that needs tending to, or, this huge family secret just came out and I'm like, I need 7 weeks of straight therapy. I can't, take on a new role at work. That's, hyperbole right there. But also, Capricorn, you have Venus and Jupiter in your 7th house of other people, of marriage, of business relationships. So maybe for you, as you're experiencing this tension in your public and your private life, and the things that are going on or not going on that are being stopped from happening, leaning on or asking for support from other people. This idea with the benefics, both the benefics being in your 7th house, this could be a way of actually allowing others to support you as you navigate these tensions that you are likely going to be experiencing in your private and public life. Alrighty, moving on now to our lovely Leos and our effervescent Aquariuses. I don't know, are Aquarius is effervescent? I'm an Aquarius sun, so maybe. Anyway, let's move a little bit more here just so that we can get more into the thing. Yeah, okay. All right, so Leo and Aquarius. So Leo, you have this transit happening across your 3rd and your 9th house, and so do you, Aquarius. So for you, Leo, you have Saturn and Neptune in your 9th house. And Aquarius, you have Mars in your 9th house. So let's talk a little bit about the 9th house. The 9th house has to do with philosophy. It has to do with religious belief. It has to do with long distance travel. And so Leo, for you, you might be experiencing some questioning, some wondering, some existential reflection around some of the things you thought or you held to be true in your life. Another way that this could show up is that there is a desire for a long distance travel, like you planned a trip, but something goes awry and you're unable to go. Or, you were an avid traveler before and now you're like, I don't really feel the need for that anymore. I want to speak to the fact that Mars is actually ruling this sign of Aries. So Saturn and Neptune are responding to Mars's direction. And Mars is in your 3rd house, Leo. And so what you might be noticing in your 3rd house, or I was just thinking that maybe any long distance travel you had planned is put on hold because something is happening in your environment. Something could be happening with your sisters or with your extended family that you have to tend to, or something's happening in the neighborhood that you're unable to travel because you have to deal with that. Something could be going on with the neighbors. You might be finding some action around new ways of communicating yourself in the world, like maybe you're starting a new like blog or video vlog or whatever it might be, and looking at trying to get that done, but finding some hiccups in those things. And again, the support or having things happening with your siblings or your extended family, there might be some struggle you're having in getting support for either yourself during this circumstance or for those family members during this circumstance. And then Aquarius, much the same could be said of you. You have Saturn in your 3rd and Mars in your 9th. With Mars in your 9th, Aquarius, this could be more about exploring new beliefs or philosophies. It could also be about maybe starting a new education system, like maybe you're thinking about going back to school and you're like, yeah, let's get this done. And then Saturn, your 3rd, might be, inviting you to slow down on that or to think a little more deeply about, is this really what you want to do? And then with having Saturn and Neptune in your third, again, this could speak to your siblings and extended family, maybe an issue around them, a lack of communication, or maybe a break in communication with family members is one way this could show up. And then with Neptune there could be maybe some kind of daydreaming around reconciliation and hoping for reconciliation with that. As well, you might have gone no contact with people. That's a possibility where you're like, I'm just going to take a break from communicating with my family. So that's for you, Aquarius rising. And then for Leo, some of the, tensions around family, and maybe your belief around family. It's like what you thought to be true is no longer what you thought it was. Alrighty, and now let's move on to Virgo and Pisces, and this will be the last reading I will do for this video. So Virgo and Pisces, for you, we have Saturn and Neptune in your 8th house or 2nd house, and Mars in your 2nd or 8th house. So this is on the 2nd, 8th house axes. So this actually speaks to, the 2nd house speaks to finances and resources. That's how you support yourself. So what you eat, how you sleep, exercise, relationships, both, family and outside of family. And then the 8th house has to do with karmic debts, expectations around relationships, what we think other people owe us, what we think we owe other people, and then what other people think we owe them, and what other people think they owe us, if that makes sense. Also, the 8th house deals with the inevitable, the consequences of choices, what's coming down the pipeline. And so thinking about, the consequences of choices we make in relationships and how that's going to go. So for you, Virgo, you have Mars in your 2nd and you have Saturn and Neptune in your 8th. So what you might be finding here, Virgo, is that you're looking for, maybe you're getting a new job and you're wheeling and dealing, but you're doing it in a way that's a little more harmonious and diplomatic, but you're wanting to be active about it. And maybe you've just started the new job, and likely with Saturn in your 8th house, there might be some delay with kind of getting settled into the job and getting it done. Or if you're looking at finding a new job, Saturn might be saying to you, do you really want to do that? Is this really what you want to do right now? And then as well, with Saturn and Neptune in your 8th house, this could also speak to maybe some delay around financial payout. Say you're waiting on an insurance payout or a mortgage or an inheritance, and there could be some unrealistic expectations about what is coming to you, and likely a delay around you coming into that that money or that decision will likely be delayed in being made. And then for you, Pisces, you have Saturn and Neptune in your 2nd house of Aries, and then Mars in your 8th house of other people or karmic debts. And so for you, you might be noticing a bit of a tension around your earnings. The money that you're bringing in, there might be a bit of a slowdown or a delay in that. But with Neptune, there is like a hopefulness about it, and maybe an unrealistic expectation around the finances. And then Mars in your 8th house could be an invitation of maybe something's coming in, like money coming into you. Or money being expected of you. Like there's a bill that comes in that you are like, oh shoot, I wasn't even aware that I had to pay that right now. Or there could be a renegotiation of contract coming in. So say you're renewing your mortgage, and the bank manager is like, yep, it's good, we're good. And then with Saturn in your second, there's a bit of a delay. Like it doesn't come in as quickly as you would like it to, which might cause a bit of tension. Worry and anxiety when it comes to, money and supporting ourselves. So for both Virgo and Pisces, we're looking at the financial areas of your life. There could be some new things happening, but experiencing a bit of delay. And then maybe some expectations about either money or contracts coming in that could also come in a little slower than you would like. Alrighty, folks. So that is my insights for what I see with this Mars into Libra transit for you with Saturn and Neptune in Aries. I hope you found this insightful and helpful, and I will look to touch base probably later this week. I'd like to do a tarot pull for the new moon in Aquarius, and maybe some insights around what we can see with that. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. Please feel free to write any questions that you might have around this, and I'd love to hear from you. All right, folks, we'll see you in the next one.